Hello, everybody. Welcome to Gauntlet Hangouts. This is a Thursday night hangout, and we are playing Swords Without Master. Definitely one of my favorite games of all time. Um, and tonight we have Jesse, we have Lou, and we have Tejas. Real quick, we're going to go through. Everybody's going to introduce themselves really quickly and introduce their characters. We'll start with Jesse, who is playing Zephyr. You're muted, Jesse. You're still muted.
I was apologizing because I didn't hear you say that I was muted. Hi, uh, I'm Jesse. I'm playing Zephyr. Zephyr owns a skyship, which is currently in Hawk. He wants to get it back from the pawnbroker, and he's being harried by a pirate who just wants to take what is his at every moment he can.
Excellent. Is Zephyr a pirate? Is it a him or her? Are they?
Sorry. Zephyr's a he. He's not a pirate himself. He's a maybe a privateer for hire. So depending on your perspective, but he doesn't. He.
Oh no, Jesse froze. Okay, we'll give Jesse a second to come back.
Sorry, I thought I'd solved that problem, but apparently I hadn't.
It's okay. So you're saying he is a...
He's loyal to the person who's paying his bills at the moment.
Okay. Excellent, excellent. So we'll move on to Lou, who is playing Smallest. Tell us a little bit about Smallest.
Okay, so what I know about Smallest so far is that he's a really massive dude, verging on giant. I guess I'm picturing him being maybe 9 feet tall, something like that. And he is wearing a stone mask that kind of has all these plants and stuff growing on it. It kind of looks like, I'm actually kind of picturing it having tiny mountains and waterways on it. It's like a tiny little world as a mask. And he's got these big kind of knuckle dusters made out of stone, and is draped in these all of these chains that look like maybe he's manacled as well. It looks like he's broken away from somewhere at some point. Yeah, I think that's him so far.
Awesome. All about the crushing. All right, Tejas, tell us about Roshan.
Roshan doesn't really know where he's from. As far as he's concerned, where he is from Shakti. Shakti is his goddess, and it's also his home. There's some thought that maybe it was an actual person. It's all mythology for him. What he does know, and the way he looks whenever people encounter him, is that he's always new to wherever they are, because Shakti brings him to lands and he just sort of comes out to see what's there. He does whatever her bidding is, and the way he looks, they all have this sort of vaguely technological, vaguely magical sort of etching about their persons. They all look vaguely monastic. They all wear blousy pants and things like that. And then all of them have some sort of augmentation that mimics the fact that Shakti can touch all worlds. For Roshan, what that means is that he has these sort of phantom arms that tend to manifest, and when they do, they look vaguely cybernetic, but it seems almost more like psychic powers. To him, it's not powers, though. It's just something that happens, and to him, it's just, he's got arms, and he uses them. He has, everything is sort of this weird sort of pseudo philosophy, because when he's experiencing places, he thinks of them as, just reflections or dreams of others that he's experiencing. But every time he shows up someplace, there's some sort of thing that needs to get solved. He doesn't really understand why solving the problem usually ends up with someone dying, someone that he doesn't know. But that's what he's been asked. The problem is that in the most recent set of missions, they were there longer than they normally are, and he came to know some of the people that he was observing, and it made it a little too hard for him as he started sympathizing to actually carry out his mission, which he ultimately did, but he is a little broken inside because of that, and a little uncertain as they step out of the gates into this new world, just wondering what this world is going to be like.
Awesome. So, just to give a little setting information, in this world that we're playing in, there's an area that's kind of controlled by various city-states, all with their own. Each has their own political system. Some of them are run by democracy. Some of them are run by kings. Some of them are run by tyrants. But you have all these little warring political factions. But to the east, there's a place where no one goes, and that's called the Badlands. Nobody goes to the Badlands. Something terrible happened out there, and crazy shit goes down out there. And that's where they send rogues. So that is where you are now. You are in the Badlands. You left one particular city. I don't have a name for it. We'll just call it Dutchtown. You left Dutchtown on behest of a wealthy merchant who said he would pay very well for a certain artifact that nobody has been able to get to. And the reason nobody's been able to get to it, because it's wreathed in fire. And here you are standing close to where you believe this artifact is housed, and it is blazing hot. I mean, like, every step you take gets harder and harder because the heat is just, you can feel it starting to permeate your skin into the muscles below. It is so hot. So we are going to start with the discovery phase, and I'll give a quick overview of the discovery phase before we start passing the dice. The discovery phase is, if you get the dice, you get to make a discovery. Basically, you get to set a fact about the world. You can create an object out of thin air. Once you do that, you get to ask me as the overplayer a loaded question about it. Any questions on that?
Are we making that stuff up by giving fiction, or are we just saying, here's a thing, what should we do with it?
You could give a little fiction, give a little, elaborate, because you have to speak in your tone. So go ahead and give some evocative language, how you discover this, or, how you already know it. It could be. So,
can we add motifs from stuff the overplayer says, from stuff that, or is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
So I'm gonna give the dice to Zephyr. So Zephyr, you get to make a discovery. You get to talk about it, but first you got to roll to see what tone you need to narrate in.
All right. Sorry.
Excellent. You got a jovial, so you get to narrate in a jovial tone about
Wonderful.
what you discovered.
So I think what's happening is we're kind of walking through these Badlands, and the heat is kind of washing over us and through us, and like it's almost as if it's like charging us up, right? And we're having a conversation where we're sort of getting like the heat is oppressive, but it's pushing us forward as opposed to slowing us down. The way it's not like a heavy heat, it's like the heat of hard work that pushes you to work harder. And I think we're still, as hot as it is, we're still fresh, and we're walking through these badlands when I'm a sailor, and I'm not necessarily used to walking around on solid ground, and I just like trip head over heels, roll over upside down over this at first I think it's a rock, and it's like and it's but as I sort of turn around and look at it, I go, it's a brick. And what I've stumbled over is the edge of a ruin. And like it's right at the edge of a precipice. If I had fallen an extra 10 feet, not 10 feet, sorry, if I'd fallen an extra half a foot, right, I would have been hanging over the edge of a cliff. And there's a tower that's built into the opposite end of the cliff, and there's this structure that spans this canyon down into it, and then up the other side. I'm picturing sort of like bright red sandstone, and I can see kind of in the gaps and down at the bottom there's a stream, and there's some green, sort of like growing up from that little trickle of a river down in the canyon out to oh god, did I lose you again?
Not from where I am.
Okay,
No,
sorry,
we're
I was
just all
again.
we're all listening in rapt attention.
So yeah, so there's like green growing inside. You can see it sort of like through some little windows and portholes of this ruin. Like I can see closer to the bottom of the canyon, there's some green also inside the spaces as well as outside.
So you get to ask me a loaded question about your discovery, and you'll pass the dice back to me as you do that.
All right. What makes the question loaded? Like what's a loaded question?
It's not a yes or no question. Like you wouldn't ask, is that fire in the middle? You would ask, what kind of fire is it, or
Got it.
or who put the fire there?
So
I think of them as open-ended questions. That's
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So as I like come over to the edge of the cliff, I see stairs going down, but the stairs don't go down like on the outside of the canyon, right? But rather they cut back into the inside of the cliff wall. And my question is, where do those stairs lead?
All right. Where do those stairs lead? So you tripped over this ruin, right? So you know that those stairs lead to within a tower that was just opposite of the one you looked at. It wasn't the exact one. It's one on the opposite side of the canyon. And of course, those stairs lead directly into the center of that ancient ruin. So I think we need a little bit more discovery here, and I'm going to pass the dice to Roshan. Roshan, give us a discovery.
All right, so I'm kind of hanging back. Roshan is sitting here
Hold on,
watching
Roshan.
these.
You need to roll the dice first so you know your
Oh,
tone.
sorry.
Awesome. You are also jovial.
And the amount by which one is higher or whatever, that doesn't affect things. It's just jovial or glum.
Right. Unless we get into morals, but if I see that roll, then I'll stop.
Okay. So anyway, I'm thinking that. So we're standing here, and we're out on this thing because we've all sort of been contacted separately. We've all been sort of getting to know each other just through the journey out here, and like this heat, it just seems like it for me. It's not natural because it's all climate controlled and everything else. Where I am, it's all just sort of this steady thing. And yeah, I've been in other worlds, but to see these two guys just sort of go deal with it, it's telling me like, okay, I guess this place is just naturally sort of like hostile and crazy and oppressive. And so when I see him kind of look down and start looking at these stairs and hopefully leading to wherever we're going to find this artifact, I'm looking down into the valley and the ruins, wondering what sort of like crazy hostile thing is down there waiting for us. We go down the steps, and the steps aren't so much rickety as the cliff face is just old, and it's just like covered with like these lichens and mosses that you'd find in rainforests, and the kind of things that are just like aggressive growth, things that soak up the heat, right? They've burrowed into the stone and sort of, caused huge cracks. And when Smallest takes steps, it almost causes, like chunks of wall to fall away. But, we hug up against the wall as we head down into this tower. And finally, as we're going, we're about to enter something that's actually enclosed. We're going down. We're heading into, the valley. We get maybe a third of the way down. There's still a lot in front of us, even though we're starting to get into like enclosed structure now. And there's suddenly this loud, piercing crack as Smalls is doing the best he can, but like just one particular stone suddenly just shatters underneath him, causes a small like avalanche of rubble that gets bigger and bigger below us. He sort of struggles, and because he's so huge, both Zephyr and I have to like reach out. I have to use like 3 hands to grab one of his arms to keep him from sort of plummeting down. And all that rubble sort of cascades, and it makes this sort of thunder, and that thunder sort of echoes through the valley, and then it stills. And, so it's like loud, 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 quiet, quiet, fades, drop, drop, crack, nothing. And there's just this stillness except for the wind. And then suddenly, and, sort of that like drums in the deep sort of tone, there's suddenly a single sort of like boom from somewhere in the ruins below us, and except it's not like drumming, it's like a call, like almost like a hooting, but sort of guttural. And then it's answered, and then there's another one, and then it starts kind of like taking up a cry. And what we start seeing is shaking in the foliage and whatnot that's below us. And then as that becomes more rhythmic and almost comes to like be, like chanting, and makes us feel like, oh God, we got to get under cover. And we kind of zoom into that last bit of cover. So we're just now out in the open. We see things starting to emerge, and they're not quite humanoid, but they're not quite animalistic enough to just be, quadrupeds. It seems like in an almost ape-like way. Sometimes they're on two legs, sometimes they're on four, but they sort of scuttle along almost like lizards, and they're far enough away down in the valley that we can't really quite see what they are. They're just sort of distant. They're just vaguely, sort of person-sized, but they're just boiling out like, just foam coming out of the sea as they're coming towards us. And, I just say, I have not seen such things before. What are they, my companions? And I'll stop there.
Excellent. So that is the loaded question. What are these things? Excellent. Yeah, so these beasts that you see below you, that are, just in multitudes, that, there's so many you can't even count them. They're beasts that you have heard rumors of, but nobody has really actually confirmed, because these beasts are so strange, because not only do they subsist themselves on blood and are cannibalistic, but also can subsist just on pure energy, and that includes heat. So I'm going to take the dice back. I'm going to end this phase here, because I think we got something to step forward into. Sorry, Lou, you do not get to make a discovery, but I'm going to move into a rogues phase. So during a rogues phase, we make demands of each other in the form of the question, show us how you blank. Okay? And then you will roll the dice, and you'll narrate how you answer that question. So, Lou, smallest, I should say, you're going to get the question first. Show us how you get your huge frame and your two companions inside this enclosure, or this building, or the cave, or whatever it is that these stairs lead to, without alerting the mobs below.
Oh, damn, a problem that I can't solve with crushing. So I roll first?
Yep.
Cool.
Oh, I believe in you, Lou. I bet you could crush something to solve this problem.
Sorry, I'm just burping with, oops, I'm apologizing.
And Lou added drums in the deep as the first thread of the first motif, and that echoes echo, so the next two don't need to echo anything. The next two threads.
I rolled snake eyes. Does that mean anything?
Actually, it does. So what a tie is in this game is called a stymie. All right. And what a stymie is in a rogue's phase means it flips the question on its head. Instead of saying, show us how you get yourself and your two companions into the end of these stairs, the enclosure, whatever it is now show us how you don't do that, or how you do attract the attention of the horde.
Okay, cool.
The overtone was jovial, the overplayer's overtone, but that flips now. It is glum, and Lou, you are now glum too. And the fact that neither one was higher than a 3, it is also a mystery. So whatever causes you to misstep here, I guess you could say, is supernatural or unknown in nature. And you will write a question about that supernatural thing, or unknown, I should say.
Cool. So, mystery. Cool. Okay, so I guess we're kind of emerging, the three of us are emerging from maybe onto a landing as we're coming out into this area from the stairs, and there's these strange creatures kind of boiling out, and I'm kind of picturing them they're like kind of moving around, like some of them are moving around like stinks kind of on the wall and stuff. And I think we're kind of like moving as quietly as we can through like this like uneven ground and everything, and there's an entrance that we can see like further across that we're able to move towards. But I think as we come up to that, there's the land's coming up on like kind of a raise, and we from where we were, we couldn't see that there's actually like another much deeper chasm in the ground there. There's only a really narrow place to cross, and we're kind of moving through it and feeling like we're doing pretty well at evading these things. I think Roshan and Zephyr kind of cross this like narrow little like stone bridge first, but as Smallest goes to cross it, it just all starts like cracks. All these little cracks start running out in it, and I think he has to kind of jump to get across. And then as soon as these things hear us, they like all suddenly like they turn, and they're all like, there's like hundreds of these things, and they're all looking like right out where we are. And I think their eyes like start to like change into this like red glow, like kind of laser neon red glow. And I think all of the, like, it's so intense that all of the like the rocks and the light in this whole area like turn red. And then I think, so this is the beginning of the mysterious supernaturalness. Then we all start running and freaking out. We're like, "Ah," trying to get across to the doorway, and like we expect them to chase us, but instead their faces change. Like, I think you know those proboscis monkeys, have you guys seen them before, with the weird trumpets on their faces? These weird like kind of trumpets come out of their faces, and they're like, "Ooh," and there's all this like, I think it's almost like it's like a physical, it's totally like concentric circles of light and sound. This strange like visible song is like all like coming out towards us. So red light, strange sound. And what is this question I'm writing passing to you? Or is it...
Well, the question is a mystery, so it goes on the left where the threads are and all that. So yeah, you just come up with a question about that little supernatural thing you experienced.
Yeah, cool. Do I give that to you now, the mystery thing?
Yeah, you can type it in to chat when you're ready. If you want to pass the dice first, that's fine. Or we can wait till you're done.
And I'm asking somebody to show...
Yeah, you're going to make a demand of another rogue. Or you can...
Okay.
Or you can make a demand of the overplayer for the world.
Cool. I think also what happens with the song is it kind of freezes us in place. We'll like start slowing down, like we're not able to move. And I'll pass the dice to who do I want to see in action the most? I'll pass them to Zephyr. And I will ask you to show me how do you swashbuckle us out of this super bad situation that we're in.
Lovely. Okay. So. Okay, so I am glum.
Actually, you're glum, and it's also a moral. Since neither die is above 3, but it's not a tie, it's now a moral. So you'll do what you do, but you will also have a consequence of it. And you can narrate that, what the consequence is. And if I don't feel it's strong enough, I could come up with a stronger consequence. but then you'll write a moral about that consequence.
And like, what does a consequence is like a negative effect?
Yeah, you'll have you'll describe your action in your tone. Your tone is glum, and at the end of that, you'll have the consequence of your character's actions, and then you'll have a moral because of that.
Got it. Okay, so I think as the evening or as the day has progressed, and as we've been descending sort of down into this space, the sun has dropped below the horizon, and where the only light is that dull crimson glow. And you know, there's no, and so there's this like, we can see by it. It's bright enough for that as it's reflecting off the surfaces, as Smallest described, but it's not much more than that. And as this has happened, like, the noise of these creatures has kind of decreased also, right? And they are simply in, if before they were sort of like a cacophonous pack, they're now almost these like quiet stalkers, right? They know we're here, and they haven't just like, I mean, they're glowing, right? We can see them, but and this is the question I have to answer. Sorry, the mystery question.
Yeah, that's just the mystery question, Jesse. You keep going.
Mm-hmm. Right, got it. Right, the question was how do I swashbuckle us out of this? So the mood has sort of like taken a turn from the like stark terror of this massive group of creatures that were trying to suck out our blood with their proboscis things, and now we know what they are, we know what they can do, but they've gone quiet, and that's almost more frightening. As I think, like, we have also kind of slowed down, and like, we're looking at each other. I make eye contact with Smallest. I make eye contact with Roshan, and I sort of, I do the, you know, fingers to my eyes, and then I point across a gap in the stairs, and I think what I do is, it's like a very I have a rope. I'm gonna say, all right, I have a rope, but there's no one on, like, there's nothing on the other end. So I kick off my boots, and as quietly as I can, you know, while these creatures are sort of like quietly but quickly swarming towards us, I dig my toes and fingers into the rock wall along the side of the stair, and climb across the side, and toss the rope across to the other two. You know, so that they can sort of like tie it to something on their side, and use it as a way to get across the gap. You know, in the meantime, these things we get across the gap. These creatures their glowing eyes. This is all, the sun is now completely gone. So the only light is this red light that is encroaching on us ever more quickly. We duck. We were finally able to get inside that space. And we duck inside. Without even really like thinking too much about it, because we just need to get away from these things. We roll a rock. There's a large rock that we're able to roll in front that we think will at least slow them down. And we're sitting there in the pitch black now, no light at all inside this space. We don't know how big it is. And Roshan, I want to know how you can guide us forward. Guide us out of this trap that we've set for ourselves.
All right, so before Roshan takes action here, the consequence is what? You trapped yourself in somewhere?
Correct.
Okay, so you're going to want to come up with a moral on that.
Got it.
If you need help, we can help you. But you want to frame your question to Roshan. Show us how. Blank.
So sorry. So show us how you get us out of the place we've been trapped. This cavern space that could be.
Okay. So.
You want to roll first?
Right. No, I had like a quick question.
Oh, okay.
So our feats heroic. If we wanted to use those, that would be instead of rolling dice, or that would be dictated by what the dice said. We would incorporate that.
So what? Yeah, if you want to like, if you want to take over narrative control using one of your feats, and you don't
the feats interrupt somebody else.
No, the feats interrupt your own roll. So like, say you rolled a double for a stymie, you could say, instead I'm gonna use my feat heroic, and then it'll ignore the dice. So the same thing with a moral. But like if you roll, since you have total narrative control, you could totally do what your feat says regardless.
Without using it up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. So, let's roll this. Okay, so...
So that's a moral.
Glum and moral. For the morals, like, do we need to have figured out what the moral for our situation is by the end of our narration?
No.
Or can we wait to see how it resolves with somebody else before we...
Well, no, you want to, like, after you narrate and then you come up with your consequence, then you'll come up with your moral. Play can keep going, but you do want to come up with your moral, somewhat.
Okay.
Like, like Jesse's moral is one should never shut oneself inside a cave. I think he's gonna. Are you rephrasing it, Jesse?
Yeah.
That's actually. I mean, it's a good moral.
That's funny. Okay, so.
Okay.
And so, just what my sort of requirements are. I need to show how we're getting out, but I don't need to try and figure out an answer to the mystery yet. That can come out over the course of what we're doing.
No, the mysteries, anything you see on the left here with the motifs and stuff, don't even worry about them until the end game.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a pool we'll use at the end game.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, I think we're all sort of just like listening to the quiet, like shallow rasping of our breaths, and it's sort of, dampened by the interior, whatever this little cave is that we're in. So it just sounds sort of like heavy and dragging, and the first reaction being sighted beings is looking around, and you realize that nothing changes no matter where you're facing. Like, you don't even see your hand in front of your face, which you do just to, check to make sure that's actually true. You reach out and, suddenly there is like the oof as you accidentally, like, you elbow Zephyr. Zephyr, you're like trying to find the wall, and instead you find my foot, that kind of thing. And finally, Roshan says, "Just halt, both of you, and still your minds." And he, kind of just pushes out with his hands and closes his eyes. And what you guys see is suddenly this very, very dim glow. And as the glow starts to grow, you realize a couple of things. One, it is sort of emanating from the base of his neck. He has like kind of longish hair, and he's got tattoos, and he's sort of a weirdo, so you wouldn't really look too close, but it starts sort of glimmering out from behind him, and it creates this weird sort of glow behind him. And you see that he's taken this like very yoga sort of pose. His right leg, the foot is resting against like the crook of his left knee, and both of his arms are bent with his hands in front of him, like curled into these contorted sort of finger poses as he has them like pulled in front of his chest. And you're not sure when you start noticing it, but suddenly you see like, wait, is there 2 arms there or 3 arms there, as they sort of are like limbed with light. And as he does that, his eyes are closed, but that glow from, you realize it's almost sort of like crystalline, like there's something like embedded in his neck. And the light sort of starts kind of making traceries around the tattoos that are on him. And then one of his arms, not his first 2, because those are still sitting there in his meditative pose, but one of his arms sort of like reaches out, and then another one, and then another one. So he's got like 3 arms, and they're all kind of braced against the walls behind him. And that light that's sort of like making traceries on his arms suddenly spreads out from one of his palms. And at first it's just sort of like tracing cracks on the wall. And again, super dim. I mean, like a candle sort of dim. But then as it starts picking things out, you see that it picks out this sort of area in the wall. And he sits, as that area starts to glow, like just the rocks there start like getting traceried and outlined, and then suddenly his eyes open and they're sort of glowing with a brighter version of that night from the back of his neck, and he looks up at Smallest, and with a 4th arm that just appears for a second before it fades away, he just sort of points at it and says, "Smash."
Smallest chuckles gleefully. Finally.
Oh, I'm sorry. And do I need to specifically say what happens as he, just like his massive frame, those knuckle dusters slam into the wall? Even that sound is sort of absorbed by the heaviness of the air. But like the first one, rubble falls away. Then the second hit, there's a small opening, and suddenly you can see some light from the outside. There's some breath of, that like horrible kind of air that had been out there, but it's much better than what we had been trapped with. And, a third thing, the whole thing sort of breaks aside, cascades down. He's able to step forward with a foot and sort of smash out some of the stuff that's below it, and makes roughly like a 4 or 5 foot opening that we can step out into. The light's, bright in our eyes, but, as we all kind of step through the opening that's created, Roshan looks kind of normal. You only ever had 2 arms. You don't know what you were thinking. It must have been a trick of the light. And you kind of look around and you see yourselves in it almost looks like a glade, like it's got like that carpeting of moss and stuff. You can still see flagstones and things underneath it, and it's got this carpet of sky, and you don't suddenly realize you've been underground for so long because above the darkness is not, ceiling, but the darkness is stars. We've been down for so long that night has fallen, and yeah, we're just kind of like out in like that very lower courtyard down in the ruins that we had seen. Somehow we've gone from like inside to back outside. We busted out of there, and we're now down kind of in the floor of the valley, in the floor of the ruins, with the tower, which was our destination, closer but still sort of off in the distance, across this stuff.
So what I was asking is, you rolled a moral, so there is a
Yeah.
consequence to your actions that affect your character. What is
Right.
what is the consequence? Or I could come up with
Okay.
a consequence for you.
No. I've got that. So he busts out. We step away, and we start walking. We figure like, oh, we've got this. We got away from them. They're not chasing us. They must have like all gone into this thing, and we start going out. And there's tremors, but you feel like, oh, it's wind. You're not really paying attention. It's just that shakiness of what's being out here. And then there's suddenly this like ka-chung, and like the whole valley shakes, and we kind of look back over our shoulders at the hole that smallest created for us to get out, and you see sort of cracks in the floor, kind of unevenly jagging out from where we had come out, and then there's another loud split, and one sort of zigzags and cracks further, and then one zigzags and cracks further, and then suddenly we see that the floor of the place that we are starts collapsing from the hole that we made, and that rubble starts falling down behind us, and we start having to sprint away from it, roughly in the direction of the tower, but being chased by this slowly gathering in speed chasm that is growing behind us. Sorry.
Okay. So as overplayer, I'm going to take it upon myself to say that consequence is not good enough. I need to hit you harder. So as these cracks spread, you see that same light that you saw come out your arms and move down the rock face, shoot up out of these crevices, right? And you yourself get caught on an island. And you notice some of these proboscis monkeys kind of come out, and they're feeding on that energy, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you're kind of surrounded by these things, and they're feeding off whatever energy that was you had that came from your neck into the stone. They're feeding on it. You gave them a food source, so that's the consequence.
I look delicious.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
They want your energy. So you need to think of a moral that fits that. And you can pass the dice to another player and ask, make a demand, or you can pass it to me and make a demand of the world, or you can end the phase.
Let's see. I think what phase is after the rogues phase?
The phases don't go in any order.
Oh, okay.
We've played a
it's just
discovery
like-
phase and a rogues phase so far. We haven't played a perilous phase yet.
Okay. I feel like this sounds like a good time to enter a perilous phase, so that means I should just give the dice back to you?
Yeah, just say you're ending the phase and we'll end it
Yep.
there.
I'll end the
Excellent.
phase and give the dice to you.
And yes, that is actually a good choice to go to a perilous phase at this moment. Very excellent. So go ahead and keep thinking of your moral and just type it in when you're ready. If you need help, you can ask the other players or myself. If you need help coming up with a moral.
Can I
So
ask a quick question, Pat?
sure, go ahead.
Now that we're into this second motif, where are we? How often are we? Where are we? Are we still drawing from the echoes, or are we? Where do we? Like, are they still inspired by other?
Well, your
things?
thread, only one thread needs to echo either the first motif or the original Echoes motif.
Cool. Okay.
The other two don't. It don't matter. It could be anything. Somebody says that's cool.
Cool.
Yeah, I didn't say what the thunders were in that first and second phase. I'm supposed to as the overplayer. Kind of messed that up. But in the first phase, the thunder was the oppressive heat, and the second phase, the thunder was, of course, the mass of creatures that was coming out below. So this is the perilous phase, and I'm gonna pick up the dice, and I'm gonna say that the thunder is these creatures that are getting massive off of Roshan's energy that he somehow fed into the earth, and it is now exploding in the earth. Now in the perilous phase, here's the thing. The peril will keep coming until you roll the dice. Okay? When you roll the dice, then you can resolve. You can even resolve the whole peril. You can resolve just a small victory. But if you don't have the dice, you still can speak. But it's only of your character struggling against the thunder or the storm. Because the perilous phase, the thunder becomes a storm. So you can narrate. If you don't have the dice, you can narrate, I'm fighting against this and he pins me down, blah, blah, blah. But you're struggling against it. And you'll be narrating in the overtone. When the peril gets too big, whoever has the dice, they can roll to get out the peril. Looks like we lost Jesse again. He's back in. But yeah, so.
Sorry about all this.
Oh no, it's no problem. It's still working. You're real quick jumping back in, Jesse. So yeah, so when the peril gets too dangerous and you have the dice, you can roll the die and resolve how you see fit. After you resolve, you can pass the dice to another player and watch them take on the peril. Does that all make sense? So, I think Roshan right now is in the biggest peril. So you are going to get the dice first, and I am going to keep bringing the storm until it gets too much, and you say, "All right, I'm rolling." Okay.
Okay, so this is kind of like the opposite of before, where we talk and don't roll. So do we have to go with a particular mood, or do we keep the mood from before?
Well, you go with the overtone, which is glum right now. My
Okay.
overtone is glum. So you'll narrate in glum until you roll. Now, the other two
Okay.
players can speak, but it's only about how they're struggling against this. All these creatures. But until you roll, the peril's just going to get worse and worse. So yeah, Roshan,
Okay.
you're kind of like on this island, like these crevasse. This crevasse is kind of splits you away from the other two, and this light, this crystalline light that just shimmers in all these different colors, shooting up from the ground, and you can hear the gnawing and the snorting of these creatures, and they're just like not even paying attention to you because they're engorging themselves on this energy that's coming through the stone. But you notice the light in the stone starting to dim, and
Okay.
and as
Alright.
they snort, and you see like their saliva dripping, and it's kind of glowing that crystalline color. And they look at you, Roshan, and you can tell that they can smell it. They know the source, and they know it's pure. And two of them leap into the air towards that center thing.
All right. I think what I do is, Rashawn looks at Smallest and Zephyr like across the way, and he just says, "Go, go! I will be after you. Trust me." And with that, he, takes a few steps toward the Gibbons, and then suddenly dashes off, at an oblique angle. And, just like the stuff is crumbling away below him, but he, finds a spot before he can get there, looks around. It seems like there's enough rubble and stuff that is cracked. And he sort of skids to a halt. He's got, sort of slippered feet. So, he kind of like plants his feet, and then they both slide sideways into, the dashing kung fu pose, I suppose. And as he does that, he, balls up his hands into like this complex sort of like cat's cradle intertwining of gestures, and then slaps both hands on the ground. His motions start to like pull forth that energy again, from his neck and down into his fingertips, and his fingertips are pressing on the ground. And you can see the light kind of going out through the cracks in the flagstones, but then it starts emanating from the rocks and stuff that are coming out of the ground. The mosses that are on those rocks suddenly start to like flourish and grow, but like with these weird colors that aren't what their normal colors are. They're sort of glowing with the light of, this unnatural energy. And
I think it also has an effect on smallest, like living masks.
Oh, yeah.
Accidentally too, like there's weird growths and stuff and light happening on his mask.
Okay, so yeah, maybe it's slowing him down a little bit, but while, Roshan doesn't really look up because he's seeing those things kind of stop and start seeing this sort of like, glow close to them, and just in that sort of animalistic way, food source right here, they pause to start shoving stuff into their faces. His arms start to tremble, his forearms you start seeing the cords of his muscles, his skin starts to get a little bit more pallid, his neck starts to look, as opposed to like taut and tight the way you would if you were flexing, it's more like sort of getting like sallow and sunken, almost like energy is being pulled out of him. But his hair sort of falls lank into his face, and he sort of looks sideways to see where his companions are, and he sees that they've gotten to more sort of solid footing. But at the same time, the cracks have gotten wider and wider, and he knows that he's not going to be able to get to them. So is this like a point at which I would roll, or I would pass it off?
Well, if you want to resolve, you would roll. If not, I'm just going to dump more danger on top of you.
Feel free to dump. Let's see what happens.
So,
before I roll.
So as you send this energy and you stop those kind of bigger ones that were chasing you, and they're engorging themselves again on your energy. But as you look up, you see one that's darker to the night sky. It blots out the stars, and it's coming right on top of you, and it pins you down to the ground, and it's snarling, and that proboscis comes out, and it's coming out, and it's enveloping your face, and you can feel it like little suckers. And it's like starting to dig into your ear canal, and you feel it like searching out. That you can feel its proboscis fingers like reaching down towards that crystal. It's about to suck directly on that energy source in the back of your neck.
Okay.
Are you ready to roll?
Yeah, I think better. So, let's see what happens. So it's jovial but low.
So yeah, you got another moral. So there will be you will overcome the immediate peril, but there will be a consequence of it. Or you can use a feat to ignore the dice altogether.
I don't feel like I'm in a position to, either go fully meditative or talk my way out of this. So I will see what consequence I visit upon us. I think it, comes at me, is sort of like on top of me, and because it's so, invested in trying to dig at what's in the back of my head, it doesn't realize that I'm reaching into the sashes at my waist, and I pull out, a piece of the shard, capital S in his sort of mind. To anybody else, it would just look like maybe like a slightly curved dagger, kind of like Jembia shaped. But the blade is all crystal. The handle's probably crystal as well, but it's like wrapped with some sort of leather. And as he does that, he grabs the thing's proboscis and just brings the blade up to like cut the whole thing off. and it probably just spews all sorts of, like ichor and shrieks, and with sort of an acrobatic flip, he managed to toss the thing off in one motion, while he sort of like kips up to his feet in another, manages to get away. And then, because these things are what they are, now they have something that is weakened and bleeding, and a whole bunch of its compatriots descend upon it. And that gives me time to sort of get away. But what I didn't realize happened, since I stopped being able to, channel, all of that light sort of went away. And yeah, there were ones that were close by to me that have, been distracted for the moment by their fallen companion. But the ones that were close, that had started ignoring Smallest and Zephyr, have lost their little food sources nearby and have now started thundering toward them. And it's weird, because as they sort of like come cascading down, it very much has this sort of, almost math pattern, like sort of surging of like a group over here and then a group over there and a group over here, almost like they're being directed as opposed to, individuals moving it. Or maybe it's just that very natural sort of like you see a school of fish or you see a flock of birds, but it almost like has like discrete parts that are stepping forward and stepping forward and stepping forward, like different groups within the group. And they are descending. Maybe it's because they see the little bits of light that are, glowing out of the stuff that's on Smallest face, or maybe it's just because they now want something else that's closer to hand. But they are descending down upon them.
So the consequence is you managed to bring more. Is that it?
Yeah, I think the consequence is that we bring more, but it's sort of exposing, maybe, I don't know if this is more of a mystery than it is a consequence, but it's showing that there's something bigger that's directing them at us, almost like it's trying to, there's something that's saying go after them.
Okay, so the consequences, they're more organized now.
Yes.
Okay, so you need to have a moral for that one. They got more organized. And you can pass the dice to another character. Pick a character that you want to have peril brought on, because I'm going to bring it, whoever you give the dice to.
As much as I think that Smallest would smash the heck out of these things, I think that like the idea of an Errol Flynn style dodge, swish, swirl and jump is what I want to see happening next. So I'm going to give it to Zephyr.
Awesome. So Zephyr, you see Roshan over there having all sorts of trouble with these beasts. They're just feeding off whatever he's trying to do. And you don't know if it's getting better or worse. You can't tell. You don't know who has the upper hand over there. Oh, we lost Jesse again. And he's back again. Yay. So, Jesse, yes, you see Roshan over there.
It's surprising that I see him, because I am running so fast in the opposite direction with barely casting a glance back at him. But I did, I guess, cast that one glance, and there he is.
Awesome. Is Smallest following you, or you just took off on your own, not caring?
So I mean, I took off. Smallest is sort of like lumbering behind me as best he can. He's been slowed, as we saw, by the way the power is affecting his mask, and he's already substantially, well, on the one hand, his strides are much larger, but his quickness is less because of his size, and so he's like he has dropped behind me fairly quickly, as I sort of like race out in front, following the instructions Roshan gave, which was run.
Awesome. A solution of expedience cuts one head from the Hydra while drawing 14. That's another good one. Let me go ahead and paste that one in before we continue. Jesse, hold on one sec. Sorry. A lot of morals in this game.
because of our super awesome rolling.
So Jesse, yeah, so you're running and all of a sudden you just kind of, you know, when you're with the crowd, but then all of a sudden it occurs to you that you're all by yourself and it's so quiet and you're kind of running away from where the tower was and all the crazy creatures and you're kind of running towards that original heat source that you remember from above on top of the canyon. Um, and you can kind of see its glow way above you. And you can feel the heat, but it's not as bad down here. But all of a sudden, oh, we lost him again.
Sorry, it's always happening at the least convenient moment. I'll sit here for 10 minutes listening and nothing will happen.
So
heat source, I see it.
yeah, so you see the heat source, and all of a sudden you feel very alone, and you don't feel the tremors of Smallest running behind you anymore, and you're kind of surrounded by these knee-high plants that have grown up out of the stone, and you hear like a kind of a vibration come down from that heat source. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And it's pulsating like that. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And it's like shaking the canyon itself. You see rocks fall and you can feel the ground shake beneath you. And there's another loud whoosh, and all those plants that were around your knees kind of just lay down, like they all just withered and died at the same time around your feet. And they turn black as they wither away into nothing. This lush growth just killed off immediately by whatever this pulse was, and it kind of melts. But then you see little specks of light in it, and the lights kind of grow bigger and bigger, and these lights kind of take a familiar shape, and fur starts to sprout from these black deadened leaves, and a grunting and a growling as these little specks of light turn into those glowing eyes you saw above. And they start getting bigger. At first they're like the size of, like the little army men we used to buy in the stores as kids. And they're starting to climb up you with their little proboscis, and they're kind of stinging you like a wasp would sting you. Their little proboscises are sticking into your skin, and they're kind of crawling up your legs, and they're getting close to your face. What are you doing?
All right. So the first thing I try to do is there at this point they're swarming up me, but there's not that many of them. But 8, 9, it's a lot, but it's not like completely covering me. And I'm brushing them off as I'm running. I'm trying to keep going. I take my It's interesting, as the night has gone on, the oppressive heat has turned to that like dry desert cold, and the sweat on my body has sort of like lingered. It hasn't dried, and so like I'm getting chills, and I'm feeling on my chilled skin these things skittering up and sticking into me, and I sort of like pull. I try to brush them off and wrap myself in my cloak more. In my cloak, whose name is, do I remember, Zonda. To try to both warm both as an instinctive warming thing as I'm feeling this cold, and also to try and keep these little creatures from being able to bite through to cover my skin. And I'm running and I'm wrapped and I'm slowing down. And I've got most of them off, but what's happening is as they're sort of like falling off me, they're not crawling back onto me, but they're swarming towards each other. And those leaves that had initially formed into these little mini versions of the rock gibbon skinks, not suddenly, but like as they're moving, right, are forming into a larger and larger, and all of that plant life that now was running through the bottom of the cavern is sort of like converging. First as these mini skinks, and then into a larger and larger and larger version. And it's not just its eyes that are glowing red, but The entire thing is glowing, has like that soft orange red glow, and it's chasing me. And as it's getting bigger, it's getting faster. So whereas the little ones, when I brushed them off, they would fall behind and I wouldn't be able to keep up. Right now, more and like as this is getting bigger and bigger, it's getting faster and faster, and it towers over me. And I only know it towers over me because I'm starting to sort of see the reflected glow ahead of me. Like, I can sort of tell that light source is not just like directly behind me, but it's also above me. And it's if smallest is 9 feet, it's 14 at this point, right? Half again is tall as smallest, wide as a house, and I hear that song again, right? Like a thousand little gibbons, all call together as if the little individual tiny gibbons each have their own song that's sort of being like collected and pushed out of this giant glowing gibbon. And all of this is happening in the span of 40 seconds. As I start to veer off to the left, on the side of the chasm that we came down, and towards the side that we were coming up from, right? That we're trying to go to the tower across the tower across the gap, and I'm sort of like leaping from rock to rock as this gibbon is getting closer and closer and closer, and it's like I can feel the very tip of its proboscis hitting the back of my calf, right, from below me. And I think at this point I would like to resolve.
Okay, so the way you did it there was a little out of the ordinary for the game. Because you described your own peril coming after you, and then you're describing resolving it. It's a little different.
I didn't realize that wasn't something. I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to do that.
Right. In the perilous phase, you're more reacting to the peril from the overplayer, but we'll go along with it. That's fine. Yeah, you can go ahead and roll to resolve how you're gonna, take out this thing or get away from it either way.
I thought it was sort of like a transformation of the peril into, like, I was thinking of it sort of in continuity, but okay. Next time I will know better. All right, so I roll.
All right, so you're jovial.
I am jovial. So I think what I do is I leap up one more sort of like rock outcropping, jump and pivot in midair, and drive down with my heels into its head. And as I do that, I don't do an enormous amount of damage, but right, I see some of these smaller skinks like scabbing off of it, right? Like they're breaking off and falling and dying. And I realize these are it's not one big skink, it's lots of little ones, and the way to defeat it is to separate them. So I flip the cloak that I have had wrapped around me, which is now right as I'm driving down, or as I drive down, it flies out behind me, and I grab it, and with a quick motion, sort of like as I've jumped off its head, I turn again, and just pull the cloak down over its face and head, and start to squeeze. And as I squeeze, so part of what's starting to happen is the skinks on the back are now like running up my legs again, but they start to the ones that are under the cloak, right, as it's sort of being constricted around his head, its head, start to flow out and away, And I think I've narrated myself into a corner. Hold on. Start to flow out and away. And I think in that moment, as sort of like we have sort of stopped and are stationary, Smallest comes to my rescue. Because as I've separated out these skinks and they're now like sort of running.
I'm gonna stop you just for a second, Jesse, because I don't want you to narrate Smallest's actions in this. Okay?
Got it. Okay.
So you can say that you overcame it, you blinded this creature, and led it towards Smallest if you want,
Yes.
and then
All right,
pass
let's
the
do it
dice
then.
to
To
Lou
Smallest.
for it.
Yeah. So let's do it that way.
Okay. So Lou, you now have the dice, and you see this huge lumbering creature just stomping towards you, and like you know it's huge because you're big, and this thing's bigger than you. And hanging off the back of it is Zephyr. And you don't know what he's doing with his cloak, but it looks like he's kind of, I don't know, you don't know what he's doing. But you see these little things kind of peeling off this beast, and you're not sure until one lands like right on your nose and like starts trying to sting through the stone mask. And then it notices like one of the plants that was kind of had that crystalline color. It starts sucking the juice out of that, and as it sucks the juice out of it, it gets a little bit bigger. And it's like singing this song like right in your face, and you're like cross-eyed looking at it on your nose. But at the same time, you have this huge lumbering beast that it doesn't seem to know where it's going, and it's just stomping right at you. And about 3 more steps, it's gonna stomp right on you, and all these little pieces are falling off. Do you do anything right now, or?
I don't think so. Can you remind me about the feats heroic? When do I and how do I use this?
So the feats heroic you use after you roll. So you'll
Okay,
roll, and then you can say, well, I'm using a feat. Or you can just say I'm using a feat and not roll. But that makes no sense, because if you don't roll like a stymie or anything like that, you can just say it anyways. There's no reason to use it.
Yeah, cool. I want to soak up some punishment before I act.
So this thing, it looks like it's going to step right on you, but it steps directly in front of you, and it hits the ground so hard that you could feel it in your bones, the shake, and this whole time Zephyr's kind of hanging on top, and he's saying smash it, and as he's getting slung around, and he's kind of using his cloak as kind of a harness, but yet it almost looks like it's injuring the beast as these little clones of it peel off, and it steps right in front of you, and its other leg misses you and steps behind you, but then this leg that was right in front of you just kicks you, and you go flying towards where Roshan is, and
Cool.
and you land and you tumble, and this thing keeps lumbering from where it was at towards you, and you notice you're now in the middle of these bigger gibbons that were attacking Roshan. And as this thing comes closer, you notice these gibbons kind of leap off the walls and they hug onto it. And as each one leaps off, they kind of meld into it. And it keeps getting bigger. And this thing's getting almost as wide as the canyon. Its arms are like rubbing up against the canyon walls, just tearing chunks of rock, tearing chunks of the tower out. And where its face was, but is no longer there because there's a cloak from its midsection. It just opens this giant maw of just dripping teeth, and this huge proboscis comes out. This thing's as wide as a cave tunnel, and it's coming right towards you and Roshan, and the song is so loud, and it's making your ears hurt, and you kind of leak down as this thing comes in and closes the two of you.
I think as that's, I'm just about to roll, but as that's happening, I think I'm just going to take like a tiny little flashback, like he's like, I think as he gets hit and flies back and stuff, and as this thing's coming, we see like we kind of get a bit of dream, It's like flashback music. And we see like a whole lot of these like people sitting around like a circle, maybe in a forest or something, and we see the same mask. And Smallest, you can tell that it's Smallest that we're seeing, and there's other figures that look like him all around, probably a big bonfire or something, and but they're all much bigger than him, and I think they're fighting in the. I think there's two of them fighting around this fire, like just totally going at it, and I think that we see like a really big one sit down next to him, kind of pat Smallest on the back, and he's like, it's just about like time for your initiation fight, son. And they the other fight finishes and they kind of push him out, and he's like heaps smaller than his opponent, who's the same age as him. And I think we just maybe like as it kind of floats back into like this current time, he's kind of getting this like flashback to his initiation fight of looking up at this much bigger like opponent, and we don't see how the fight ends. We just see him just about to get like smashed and like bitten by this like huge creature. Yeah, and I guess I'll have my roll now with that. Cool. Bloop.
Oh, and you rolled a moral. You can use a feat if you want to erase that.
Yeah, I'm totally gonna get rid of my pesky morals. Which one do I use? It doesn't matter which one I use, or I use the.
You could pick one, whatever one you want.
Cool. Well, it makes sense. I've got one that says I soak up punishment, physical or psychological, before arising and tearing everything down. That sounds like fun. Crush! And I think maybe this is a scene, so I can resolve this however I want.
Yeah, you can narrate it however
Cool.
you please.
I think we get this kind of, we hear some awesome synthwave music start up. Dun, 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 dun. And then I think we get this kind of really interesting scene of seeing that battle Smallest initiation fight, and like in kind of maybe overlaid, like they're kind of cut together. And I think as this like proboscis comes down over him, you just see him, he almost seems to like grow himself, like, and it's hard to tell if he's just like actually lifted himself up, like his posture changes, or if he's actually like growing. Yeah, and I think he gets his he's already got his knuckle dusters on, but he just starts like, you know, crazy stone giant boxing and smashing this thing. And there's all these little like I think it's breaking off, like what we were talking about earlier. Like each time he hits it, there's the tiny little bits of like tiny creatures flying off it. And I think maybe as he's fighting it, he kind of moves one of the chains around him, pretty much like he kind of like ends up like garroting it, like pulling the chain around and like, and its head like smashes off. And I think when its head comes off, it probably falls down and they kind of all scatter and roll away and stuff. And then he's like, and I think we see like, yeah, I think maybe we see around that. I was going to make it sad and that he was the smallest, so he got forced out of his tribe or something, but I think I'll just go with them all like he beats this much bigger opponent, and they're all like, it's probably subtitled because they're speaking some strange giant language, but we see in the subtitles they're all like, smallest, smallest, smallest.
That's awesome. So you can pass the dice to somebody else and continue the phase, or you can pass the dice back to me and end the phase there.
I think I'll just pass them back to you.
Okay.
Seeing as as I crushed all of the peril.
Excellent. Yes, you
Cool.
did.
Yeah, okay.
That
Yeah.
we know of anyway.
So yes, so we are 2 threads short of the end game. So, how are we doing on time? We got about 30 minutes till the 3-hour mark. How's everybody doing on time right now? I just like to get a gauge on that.
I'm okay. I could go a couple minutes late if I had to.
Okay. Lou?
Yeah, I've got a bit of extra time.
Okay, cool. So, actually, right now I have to use the restroom. Sorry about that. So I'm just gonna take a couple minutes and run to a bio. Y'all can hang in here or, take off yourself. It's only gonna be a couple minutes, of course. Is that
I'm
cool?
gonna top up my whiskey.
All right. Sorry about that.
You alright?
See, like, for example, it didn't drop at all when we weren't doing anything.
All right. Do you think it's a bandwidth issue or
I
hardware?
think it might be. I lowered the bandwidth as low as it can go while keeping video up. But like, this is also like I use Hangouts like relatively frequently. I don't usually have this problem at home. It might be the hours.
Could be.
Like I tend to have bandwidth. Like I tend to have video streaming bandwidth issues from like prime television watching time in my neighborhood. Like when more people in the building are streaming. Maybe this has always been my guess. Like between like 8 and 11 p.m. And I don't typically use. I have not historically been on Hangouts during like that period. So that might be the issue, but I really don't know.
Yeah, it could be. You never know with technical things.
Mm-hmm. Also, to me, it's all magic. I don't really have any idea. There's a box and things happen.
All right. So it looks like everybody's back. So we'll just jump right back into the story. So yeah, I imagine now that, we kind of fast forward a little bit and you're deep within this tower, right? I imagine that Zephyr has kind of like, kind of like when you cut yourself shaving, you put the toilet paper, there where you're bleeding. I imagine Zephyr has that like on his legs, where the tiny, where the tiny proboscis creatures kind of bit him, and I imagine, Roshan has a bandage back on his neck where that proboscis tried to dig into that crystal right there, and I imagine, Smalls just kind of walking with the strut, knowing what he just did, crushing all these dangerous things out there. But either way, you're now in the darkness of this, deep in this canyon, and you could kind of feel that pulsating again, like what killed the plants outside. That wah 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 wah. It's steady, it's rhythmic. And it's getting louder and louder as you get closer, but it's not. You don't feel that oppressive heat down here like you did outside. You don't feel that desert heat. You don't feel that that outside climate. And here it's like almost like it's like a greenhouse feeling. It's warm, but it's also very very moist in here. Like even the walls you can notice are like kind of sweating a bit. As you move closer to you're moving towards the sound. So I'm gonna go into a rogues phase, and I believe this is a good one for. I think this is a good one for Roshan. Roshan, show us how you lead. How you lead your party through the winding labyrinth of this tower and canyon to the source of this pulsating sound.
All right, so I think Zephyr has kind of shown his.
You want to roll first?
Oh, sorry. Keep forgetting.
Yeah, it's okay. It's another moral. Well, you could use your one of your feats heroic if you don't want to suffer a moral.
Okay, I think I am going to use one of my feats where we're stuck in this labyrinth and I'm trying to figure out, we're just sort of like, should we go left? Should we go right? Is it, like, well, I've heard just always go left and you'll eventually end up where you're supposed, that kind of thing. And as they start talking between themselves, I kind of pull myself off to the side, and from within, like a pouch that's at my side, I pull out, like a little crystal that's maybe like this big, and it's like a salt crystal or something like that, but like a really, just like one single salt crystal as opposed to grains of salt. And I take it and, kind of smash it in my hand and start to crumble it so it does start to powder and grind. And as it does, I throw it on the ground and pull out like a small bit of flint and a flame stick, strike it a couple of times with a little metal rod, and the sparks catch, and the little pile of salt just immediately catches it, and then starts to waft up this smoke that he's sort of takes a couple of handfuls to sort of get into his face, and then sort of closes his eyes. It takes like a moment. These guys probably don't even see him do that. It's more like when they start smelling, they're like, oh, what is that? Because it just has this rank, sort of like overly briny scent to it. Like the sort of like dead fish and salt kind of smell. But it doesn't seem to affect them the same way it affects me. For them, it's just sort of like a strong odor. Whereas with me, it really seems to almost like cocoon him, and the smoke itself seems to like swirl around him, not in a natural way. And as he does that, he starts saying, okay, we should walk. And as he does, he goes, and just in this weird sort of way, he has, kind of the hand that he gestures with, it's almost gathered up a small swirl of that smoke that still kind of wafts up into his face. And, the other two sort of like look at each other, like, smoke doesn't do that, but he keeps on walking forward, and, the smoke itself seems to almost, like, what do you call it? Like, just like signpost out as they come to intersections, as they come to choices, bring them forth choices. And a lot of times it's not so much that it is literally guiding them as much as it sort of leads towards pointing out dangers that they know to avoid, or things like that. They see this huge chasm, looks like an easy bridge that's going to go across it, and they're like, oh, why don't we just go across that thing? But it guides them down another path, and as soon as they go past, they see that the underneath of the bridge is just like clung to by more of those gibbons, but just all asleep. That kind of thing. It's sort of like guiding them through until finally they are at the the base of the place itself, and they're looking forward. They see this massive sort of gate, like something that is a relic of what this ruin used to be. It's ornate. It's got carvings. The the artwork, that obvious and effort that went into this doorway is sort of impressive, and it makes you almost a little bit sad that like nothing else of the majesty that this door seems to indicate is left. The rest of the ruins is just, knee-high cobblestone walls that don't really amount to much of anything other than obstacles. Like whatever the grandeur of this place used to be, it's now lost to time, and it's going to take a lot more exploration and historians to put together the bits and pieces of what it could have once been. But this door is just like an edifice that's like a memorial to the majesty that used to be suffusing this place.
Cool. So I added the last thread here, an out-of-place ornate gate. I kind of like that.
Okay, cool.
So yeah. So we filled out all the motifs. So now we move into the end game. So we continue play as normal during the end game, but at any time during your narration, you can hold on one sec. Sorry. Anytime during your narration, you can what we call reincorporate. So in order to reincorporate, you'll take a motif, okay? And out of that motif, you'll combine 2 threads to make something totally new. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, I dropped for like the first 5 seconds of what you were saying.
Okay, so we're in the end.
When do we reincorporate?
At any time you narrate. So we're now what we're calling the end game. So anytime when you narrate, you can reincorporate by taking a motif and combining 2 threads of that motif into something new. So for like the echo, like say for the echoes motif, you can say, if I was going to say movement and rhythm and shattering a bone and light, I can narrate something about something breaking in rhythm, or, light flashing in rhythm. Just tie that in the motif, and that would be reincorporated, and we'll cross those off. You can't use those threads or that motif anymore. And once you reincorporate, you cannot receive the dice again. Since we got 3 players, after 2 you reincorporate, the 3rd player will roll for tone and do an epilogue. Okay. Now, also in addition to that, if you don't want to reincorporate by mixing the threads, you can answer a mystery, or you can suffer a moral that's on the board. Now, when you suffer a moral, you can either show that you learned from that moral or you haven't learned from that moral. It's up to you. So there's multiple ways you can reincorporate in the end game. This kind of just ties the whole story together and it comes to an end. So we're going to keep playing. We're still in a rogues phase. Roshan, you can make a demand of another rogue, or you can make a demand of me for the world, or you can end the phase. It's up to you.
Just a quick question before we move on.
Sure.
Do you have to reincorporate when you narrate?
No, you do not have to reincorporate your narration.
I know we want to because we're getting on time. But
right. So, but by the rules of the game, if you don't reincorporate, we keep playing like normal, until 2 things are reincorporated, because we have 2 players or 3 players. But you don't have to. It's your choice.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so you said I need to pose a question to somebody?
Yeah, you're going to make a demand of another rogue or the overplayer if you want it about the world.
Okay. I'm going to ask Smallest, what secret do you know about this artifact that we've been sent to find, that you have been holding back from us out of fear that we would have, bowed out of the expedition?
Okay, real quick, remember to phrase your question. Show us, because that frames how they act.
All right, sure. So,
I'll translate. I can translate that myself if you want. Unless you want to phrase it again, I get what you want me to show you. That's a cool question, by the way. Okay, let me see where I'm going to try reincorporate here.
So what is the question again? Sorry. I kind of did pick up on it.
Well, how I heard the question was show us what secret you have about was it the artifact that's here that that I didn't want to share with the other two in the party for
Exactly.
Okay.
yeah. So let's see here. I think maybe I'm gonna reincorporate the.
So Lou, before you say it, go ahead and roll for tone, and then
cool.
roll for tone, narrate, and then tell us what you reincorporated.
Okay, I will do it like that.
Okay, so you rolled a stymie, but since we're in the end game and you are planning to reincorporate, we could ignore it.
Cool. So
you're
So
telling
should we re-roll, or he keeps the old tone?
No, see the overtone was glum, but the overtone flips on a tie, so now the overtone is jovial. So he would narrate jovial.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm stuck between these two things. Yeah, I changed my mind. Okay. So I think we see we flash back to kind of after the initiation ceremony that we saw earlier as the party are kind of walking up to this this ornate gate, and there's you can kind of like hear all the drums and stuff, and everybody's chanting, and we see the smallest's father, who we're guessing his father, kind of lead him away, and he starts to tell him about like that there's secret parts of this initiation that there's secret knowledge of his people that he's only got access to now, and that there's other parts of his initiation that he still needs to complete. So he's kind of and I think as we're hearing these words, we're seeing Smallest kind of crossing like big like swathes of land, like he's traveling out of the forest and across plains and entering cities, and everyone's staring at him. And I think we kind of see the first meeting, like with Roshan and Zephyr, like we kind of see bits and pieces of their journey here together. And then I think we hear Smallest father say that that he needs to retrieve this object that was stolen from their people, like far in the past. He tells him where it is, and we see them walking up to this ornate gate, like, and his father's describing the gate and stuff, and he's like, I think he says, and anyone else that looks upon it, you can't let them leave there alive. And we just see Smallest just kind of looking at but I think he's kind of looking, he's gotten to know these people, and he's looking at them and thinking about the words of his father, and then they walk through the gates together. So I was reincorporating the third motif, the gate, the initiation, and I was trying to do the drums as well.
All right, that's fine. You get to choose two. So which two would you choose out of that one?
The gate and I guess the initiation.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that was really good. I like that. So you can't receive the dice again, but you could pass the dice to another rogue and make a demand.
I like how you've been using the flashbacks. That's been cool. I wish I would think to do that kind of thing.
I just love flashbacks. I always do flashbacks. I'm just thinking about it because I want to know. I think I want to see Zephyr do the epilogue, so I think I'm going to pass the dice to Roshan, mainly because I want to see some cool shit in an airship at the end of the. And so I'm asking a question now.
Yep. Show us how blank.
Cool. Ooh, I wonder if I can. Let's see here. I'd like to show me a vision that Shakti sends to you as you enter as you walk through the gate.
Okay. So let me look.
In this game, there's
All right.
plenty of choices.
Yeah.
You don't play
Yeah,
this many
super
games
cool.
of Swords with this many choices on the left side. It's pretty cool.
I think what I'm gonna go with is this. So we walk into.
Go ahead and roll first.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
That's fine. It's easy to forget.
That's easy to forget every time.
look, another moral. I love all these low rolls, but you don't have to worry about it if you are reincorporating. Are you reincorporating?
Okay. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So you'll be jovial.
Basically, when we walk through the gate, we come into this hall that is obviously, from its sense of scale, was made for giants or people with like this ostentatious sense of self-importance. The whole room is just curtained, and so, like, it doesn't even make sense why this has held up so well, considering like how terribly the rest of this place has fallen into decay. But there are these just like heavy, lush tapestries that are just like colored with. I mean, for a culture like this, like certain colors are just luxurious, right? Like you can only dye certain colors or make certain colors, through pretty expensive technology. And so like the tapestries have like this super lush quality to the material, and they obviously incorporate cloth of gold, and like the whole room gleams with this sort of like rose gold sort of hue. It just lends everything this sort of like almost like overwarmed tint. But at the same time, so there's like huge tall pillars, and then the walls are covered by these things. The tapestries show just like scenes of like battles that are not from history books that we would have known about. Because they show beings that don't quite look human fighting against beings that don't look anything like human. There's nothing in the sense of scale to what we're seeing, though. And like above us, we see it's almost like a Ragnarok end of times Michelangelo frieze across the ceiling. It is 60 feet above our head, and then it's domed, and it's done in all of these different pieces. But it shows like if you understood the history, you'd know what order to look at all of this imagery in. But it shows like obviously like important figures with that sort of uniform kind of like that halo kind of imagery that is around like holy figures. Every single one of them seems to show like the desecration or final death of some sort of figure that has that holy light around their head. And so like that's just sort of the imagery around us as we're walking through this huge long hallway. And like in here we can see down at the far end there's this giant, you know, like all my words are failing me. I don't know what is going on. Church altar, thank you. So there's like this huge altar down at like the far end, and on it in this sort of like place of honor is the artifact. And you can see that, from somewhere in here, like it almost seems like it's emanating from the artifact itself, is like this incredibly dry, cold air. It's like a breeze that like wafts our hair and kind of pushes against us. And despite how hot it was outside, we feel chilled, and the cold gets deeper and more intense, and more brisk. And like by the time we've gotten close, our cheeks have actually gotten reddened from almost like windburn as we get up close. And finally we are at the base of the altar. Realize just how huge the thing is, because the steps themselves are maybe like 5 foot tall rises that we have to clamber up just to get up to the next step, and to acquire the artifact, which, let's say it's something chalice like, up on top of this altar. It almost seems like we're going to have to like hurt ourselves or find some way of preventing the cold from injuring us in order to interact with it.
Awesome. So would you reincorporate?
And what I was trying to use was the dry desert cold and the red sky and red land.
Okay, well, you need to you got to reincorporate from within the same motif.
I'm sorry.
But you did, because the way you described the tapestries, it could be dripping with crystalline color. It still worked out.
Or it could have been the songs, like
or the songs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I like that one better, because the songs and the like the Sistine Chapel type ceiling, I thought that was really cool.
Right.
So we'll go with that one.
Sorry.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Awesome.
I missed the tail, like the last 10 seconds of your narration. We get to the altar, and what did we see?
It's like this chalice. The artifact that we're after is like this, basically big cup, but it is just like throwing off so much cold that we can tell, like, if we touch it, like our hands are just going to be like immediately chapped with frostbite. So we need to figure out some way of interacting with it that it's not going to injure us.
Got it. All right, thanks.
So now, Zephyr, you are the last player. You didn't get to reincorporate, but you get to do the epilogue. So you will roll for tone and give us a nice little epilogue to close this thing out.
All right. Is there any, in terms of like, are there any like restrictions to how that works?
Oh, there's no restrictions. It's you just roll for tone and give us a short little epilogue to close us out.
Got it.
Let's hope it's Smallest beating you all to death.
Sweet. So you're jovial. You don't have to worry about reincorporating in that. Just take us on the outro. What's the closing scene of this movie?
All right. So just clarification also in terms of like, I don't want to take over the other characters, but like, how much am I able to narrate like their responses?
Well,
can I ask them to tell me?
You can. Most of the time, you just narrate what they're doing. I mean, you can't like kill them or kill any of their name things or destroy them.
Feel free to take whatever liberties with my character, including death and destroying all my
There you
things.
go. Yeah, it's by permission of player. So
Okay. So here's how this is gonna go. I think. I take my cloak, which has the warmth of the afternoon sun, as I think I described it, and I wrapped the goblet in that cloak. I pick it up, I bundle it up, and I can see. It's hard. It's hard to see. I think, but I think what happens is Smallest takes off his mask, and puts it on the altar in place of the goblet, where he sort of, is like, I'm not fully willing to reveal what all of this is about, but I'm leaving a part of myself behind, maybe as a rejection of what happened, maybe as something dear to replace that which we're taking. I don't think either I or Roshan quite understand exactly what just happened there, but there was something. And we make our way out of the ruin. And as we step back out of the labyrinth into the canyon, the sun has risen enough the next morning that we can see it just peeking out of above the edge of the canyon, which means it's pretty late actually in the morning because of angles. And there's no sign. That's not true. We can faintly hear the song of the skanks, and we see sort of like as the chasm that, like, not the chasm, but that the jagged tear that was ripped in the floor of the chasm by Roshan's power is sort of like coming up from that. We can hear faintly the song of the skinks, and we make our way back up. We see sort of like without the pressure of these creatures chasing us, we're able to see a more direct route up the outside of the canyon. And as we sort of like crest that the top of the canyon, right, we move out of the sort of the shade and back into that oppressive heat. And it was hot in the canyon in the morning too, but not like how it was. And we're heading back to town. Remind me the name of the town.
I think I called it Dutchtown. I don't quite remember, but I think it was Dutchtown.
Yeah. So we see the sort of like wooden wall of Dutchtown, like lower wall. And I think the way the city works is that there's like a city on the ground and then a city in the air. And so you go in, when you come in, you go into the city in the air, but our patron or the person who hired us is lives in a mansion up in the upper city, perhaps even a tower. And we climb up to the highest neighborhood in the city. And I hand him the goblet, and I actually think that Roshan leaves us maybe before we even get there. I think that he's Shakti is floating outside the city, and he doesn't even come to get paid. He has his reasons for. He feels that perhaps he feels that by simply by discovering the artifact, he's accomplished Shakti's will, and they're then going to move on to the next world, to the next place. Maybe not. He doesn't say. He expresses gratitude for our help and pleasure in our companionship, and we of course thank him for how he helped us, and we, Smallest and I, move back. We're continuing to see up to where the guy who hired us, and we get paid and part ways. And I don't think we really say anything. I think we just sort of nod and go our separate ways. We haven't. We had, and I go to the pawn shop and I pay off the pawnbroker for my ship plus interest.
So Jesse, just for the matter of time, just tell us what the last.
I'm cutting it right off now.
Oh, okay, you cutting it right off right here.
Yeah, cutting it right there. It's about to give you that last shot.
Gotcha.
Right? And what you see, it's now sunset of the next night, and the Mistral is sailing away from the port towards a bright light in the distance.
Excellent.
And that's cut.
Awesome. Sweet. Thank you guys for playing. That was a very, 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 very good story. I really enjoyed that one. Yes. So before we close out, we need to echo for our players next week. So what we'll do is, let me make a copy of this and paste it over here. So what I need each of you to do is pick out one thread that's not colored in red and that you would like to see carried over to next week. And I'm just going to go right to left on my screen. So Roshan, we'll start with you.
Let's see. I really liked Limned with Light. Yes, it was Limned.
You liked Limned with Light?
But yeah, the Limb with a B was also kind of funny.
Yeah, I like that. Awesome. Lou, which one would you like to see carried over?
I'll go for Dripping with Crystalline Color.
Excellent. That's a very evocative one.
Illuminated by the crimson glow of 100 hostile eyes. 100 hostile eyes. That second 100 is really important. It is.
It is. It is. 100
I
is a
should have
lot.
put in a comma. Sorry.
I could add a comma. Excellent. So those are echoes for next week. That should make an interesting game. So, real quick before we take off, I'd like to do like a little bit Roses and Thorns, something I like to do at the end of every game. Let's start off with Thorns. Does anybody want to jump in, go first, or shall I name somebody?
I'll say something. I think that, and this is probably because of inexperience with the system, a whole lack of system mastery thing, but I know that I forgot to give my vision while I was talking about us going through, and I meant to tie it into the imagery that was in the tapestries and in the ceiling and stuff. But I think that when you're new to the game, there's so many sort of I don't want to call it minutia, but there's definitely very mechanical. You need to do this because of what the dice said, and I kept forgetting what I needed to include. I just sort of rode my little train of description, and then I was like, wait, was I supposed to do something with that too? So that I think,
was kind of imagining that maybe everything you were seeing wasn't even actually there. That's how I enhanced the vision. You just we were just walking through rubble, and you were seeing all of this stuff that used to be there.
Yeah,
that's a cool idea. You guys are seeing just destruction, and I'm seeing echoes of the past. Hey, echoes! There you go.
There you go. Yeah, that's cool.
I kind of like when you accidentally break the game, how it still kind of works anyway. If you miss a rule,
yeah,
that's cool.
So, Lou or Jesse, any thorns? Me about it? If they've made the system, my GMing, anything. I got thick skin. I could take it.
This is also, I think, a lack of system mastery thing too, and also maybe on my part a lack of attention to detail. But something I think I had a hard time. I would be hard pressed to to tell you what tone any given narration was in, And like I think even like I see this with my own narration where like I started out kind of trying in a tone, but then I would get lost in like whatever the scene was in the moment, and the tone would, if it was ever apparent, would get lost. And I think that was often true, like across the board. I don't know, like I'm calling it a thorn because I think it's maybe not, the system sings more when you can really feel that, but also I don't know how much it like really negatively impacted my
enjoyment of the story. Yeah,
exactly.
Right. So here's the thing about the tones, and a quick thorn I want to touch on. I know I'm playing with 2 new players. The thing with the narrations is when each player narrates, you kind of want to keep it. You want it evocative, and you want it in that tone, but you also want to keep it somewhat succinct. I let the narrations in this game carry on a long time. Like each player had very long narrations, which you try to avoid a little bit in Swords Without Master. But I'm not the type of a person that's going to try to interrupt you too much while you're in the middle of narration. And that touches on the tone thing, because the longer your narration goes, the less you're going to be able to stay in tone, and you're going to be able to touch both tones. So if you notice that with these longer narrations, you'll start off in tone, and then by the end, you're out of tone. You're in a totally different tone. So the more succinct you can keep your narration, the more the game sings, I guess, in a way, with those tones.
there'd be a lot more interaction too. Then, like somebody being able to play off somebody else. Yeah, I can see that.
Right.
I wish I'd kind of like kept that in mind a lot more.
Right. That's really the first time I've kind of run into it in a game with these longer narrations. Like most of the other games I've played in, you know, the narration has been pretty succinct. You know, boom, boom, boom. Here's the action. Here's what I did, all in tone, and then it moved on. So one thing this game lacked, as opposed to a normal game of Swords Without Master, I could say, or an average game, I should say, is the amount of phases we played in. I think we only played in 4 phases, and I've seen some games that have actually only played in 4 phases, but there was more, you know, narration between each character.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've seen rogues phases where one's rogues phase, you'll see the dice get passed multiple times between people, but it still worked out fine. We told a good story. We managed to stay in tone for the most part. As long as you hit that tone in your narration, it doesn't matter if you veer off, as long as you just hit it that once. I mean, and that's in the spirit of the game.
Yeah, it seems like maybe part of the tones thing too is that there is support to get you started easily. Like there is scaffold, and you see them, and you like look at one of the things, and you're like, oh, eerie, and you go off on that, and if you fall off it. But yeah, I guess if you go longer, you're almost guaranteed to fall off of that little scaffold. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, it doesn't matter if your whole narration is jovial, as long as you had that one glum thing in there. Really, that's all you really need.
Out of curiosity, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lou, if you wanted to say something.
No, you go for it.
I was curious, how much of that is, do you think, like the being able to be succinct is just experience with story games in general? Because this is the first thing that was not like D&D that I have played. You know, I mean, not just D&D, but pretty much everything I have ever played is like super trad, you know?
Right. So yeah, I mean, it does take experience. Like, in fact, my first foray into independent gaming was this game. Before that, I had only played D&D. I never played any other RPG before this one. And like when I played this one, I think that's the reason it's like one of my favorites. You know, what's the saying? You know, you never forget your first. You know, it was like this was my first indie game, and it blew my mind. I'm like, holy shit, there's games like this, you know, and it's more up my alley. Even when I played D&D, I was always about the story. I care less about the numbers. You know, I always wanted a story, and whenever I played, you know, it was like it always turned into, you know, simulation battle, you know, on a battle mat, and I'm like, this is boring as shit. I want a movie. I don't want, you know, the code of a video game, you know. And this was the game that made me fall in love with indie gaming, and I think the more you play in indie story gaming, the better you get at it. This game is like, if you imagine a scale of like the crunchiest game ever on the left, which I couldn't even name, like way crunchier than Pathfinder, I could imagine. And on the right is just people sitting around a table telling a random story off the top of their heads with no mechanics. This one is closer to that than it is to the other end. It's like almost at that point. It's a very free-form game.
I've got a thorn for you, which I think is a thorn you were giving to yourself about the thunder.
Yes, I kept forgetting.
I kind of know what that is, but I don't know what it is, but I just thought I'd remind you.
So I'm going to use chapstick to demonstrate, but in a face-to-face game, in Swords Without Master, the overplayer during each phase picks up the dice. So like I'll pretend these are dice. Whenever the overplayer picks up the dice in a face-to-face game, that's the thunder. Basically, that is the omen of something bad that may happen. Now, in a perilous phase, the thunder becomes a storm, which is dead in your face. So I did have a thunder in the first 3 phases. I didn't have a thunder in the last phase, and that's my fault. It's one of those minutiae, Tejas was saying that, sometimes it slips between the cracks and you miss it, because you're focused on it.
It seems like the game's like got modular bits though too, like like similar to with the tones thing. If we fell off them a bit, the game still works, and it's still obviously there's bits you could probably forget the you could totally accidentally not do the morals or the mysteries part. Like it would lose a little bit potentially, but the game would be cool. Yeah,
I really do like the morals and mysteries part, but like it seems like every game I play, when we get to the end game, it's always a reincorporation of threads. Very few times does somebody like answer a mystery question or do a moral.
I was really close to doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it does happen. It does happen.
If I had an opportunity to reincorporate, I was going to use a moral.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I hadn't decided which one yet, but I like the idea of ending without learning a lesson.
Right.
I kind of did it anyway with that last shot, but I like that.
I really liked your epilogue, Jesse, with everyone like just walking away from each other. Like that was cool.
Yeah, it was super cool.
Yeah, this was a really good table. Y'all were really good with your evocative language. I really appreciate it. Tejas, you're really good at describing a setting. I have to say you're really amazing at that.
Thank you.
Lou's always great at throwing in a flashback that just throws everything on its head. And Jesse, it was great to hear like your character. Like my favorite part is when you actually didn't you got to a point where you said you narrated yourself in a corner. Like that was my favorite part of your character, was like, oh shit, I'm here. I got my cloak over this thing's face. What now? And I think that totally brought your character to light. Like your character's like, oh shit, what did I just do? I love that. That was great, Jesse.
I also like, Jesse, how you talked. You added the bit that let my character not kill both of you. Like that thing with the mask was really cool. That heaps worked for me. Nice.
Yeah. Putting that.
No, I think I definitely liked to go with like the game overall. Since I haven't done story game stuff before, it had a lot of stuff in place to kind of inspire you in certain directions. I feel like I was expecting Swords and Sorcery, we're just going to be like Conaning our way through like fields of mooks, and instead the story was not that, although there was definitely that moment when we were dealing with the gibbons and stuff, but it was, it was like kind of small and tight. Like if you made this a movie, like the fact that I was kind of running it at the mouth, it still would have been small and tight on the screen.
Yeah. And like the way I run it, and anybody that's like, when in the Swords Without Master community know when I run a game, there's always going to be something visceral trying to get beneath your skin. Like, like in every game I run a Swords Without Master, there's something trying to crawl inside your body or get inside your body somehow. Because I feel like that's the easiest way to make people roll the dice.
Incidentally, I loved like I loved that moment, like that sort of both because that's like a thing that freaks the fuck out of me, and second of all, just because it's like you're like we have to push this peril up. Like we need to. I feel like we up till that point had sort of been like, and then like we're stuck in a thing, or we're being chased by strange creatures, and you're like, before the story is over, they need to be in like real immediate like danger. I think it pushed all of us also to sort of like put ourselves into that place. Me to the point where I didn't really understand what the phase was, and I was just like, oh, I should make this worse. But like I think also the other guys. And another thing I loved, I just want to point this out, is that like Roshan, like I think so. On the one hand, I get how shorter narration like makes it more conversational, and like that like move faster, and but like I love like your sort of like longer, more evocative descriptions of situations, and there was a lot of sort of like characterization in that. Like I felt like I got to know a lot about who I keep on calling you Roshan. It's not even your name because that's how like Tejas, because like that character was very real to me. I think partly because of the extended narration.
That's cool. I was definitely gonna say I liked how you said I don't think that consequence is enough. Like I think I appreciated that because I was like, what can I do to make this bad? I was like, oh, that moment where everybody's like trying to not fall into the pit, and you were like, not bad enough. That I thought was like totally excellent. Yeah.
Thanks, appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, I loved playing with you guys. You guys are a great table to play this game with. That's one thing this game needs is you got to have a good table, a good table of people that are willing to be in that spotlight and narrate. A lot of times people aren't comfortable in that position in this game, but I think this game actually helps people open up with narrations.
Yeah, I think it's it's good training for that because I can be a little bit inclined to say my thing and like handball it back to the other players too, because I actually really enjoy seeing other people do their thing while I'm playing. So, but yeah, it was also, I think it helped me with, I never normally choose like a big dumb dude that punches shit as my as my character, and I think that helped me to like get into the limelight a bit more because that's kind of what he was about, being big and punching everything with everyone watching it.
Cool. So, like, one thing that's great about this game is, the type of characters you could have in it are, like, infinite. You could have, that's infinite possibilities. The one thing you just don't want, in this game, it being swords and sorcery is too much, like, fantasy stuff. You don't want elves and hobbits running around, because it's swords and sorcery. It's supposed to be human and gritty, and, if there's an off race, it's a monster, and Lou hit that perfectly with his. That's why I didn't X-card it from the get-go. But if you had picked an elf, I would have X-carded it.
I hate elves.
This is awesome. I'm very excited to play again. I think now that I understand the game better, but I actually have to run now. Thank you so much, Pat. Tejas.
Nice to meet you.
This was nice to meet you. Hope to play with you again. This was a great time.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was really awesome to meet you, Jess.
Yeah, good night, Jess. So yeah, that's the first time I played this game with Lou. Lou, did you see any of the microscope stuff in here? I didn't really throw it in there too much, but
we kind of accidentally had towers again, I guess. So I was kind of picturing that it was. I was kind of picturing that. So just for Tejas, me and Pat and Who was it? Was it
It was Kyle.
Kyle? We played a microscope game, a game of microscope in the lead up to this. That was a bit of Pat's to inspiration for world building and stuff like that. So I was totally picked. There was pretty much a kind of magical apocalypse with all these crazy towers at the end of it. So I was picturing this entire Badlands as being the, like the epicenter of one of those, and maybe even the weird gibbon things as being like the descendants of the people that were like warped by like
that was totally what I was
radiation and
picturing.
shit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like just definitely like Morlocky sort of like we used to be those people, we're not anymore. This is what's happened to us. Yeah.
So basically,
totally
we
got
played.
that vibe.
Yeah, basically we played a microscope game where we created a civilization based on magic that tore itself apart, and there was a cataclysm because of that magic. And now this setting is like, 3,000 years in the future from that, and like,
Okay.
the Badlands are the setting of that cataclysm. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and take off for the night. Once again, I want to say thank you to both of you for playing. I really had fun. This was a really good game.
You know what? Thank you for
Okay.
offering it because I would never have had a chance to try it otherwise. So yeah, this was great.
Cool.
Cool. See you, friends.
All right. Good night.
Have a good night.